What up everybody, Cult Nerdy Core. I'm back out with another video, and this video is going to be the start of a little, I think it's going to be 6-part mini-series I'm looking to do on the channel. This mini-series was one I was looking to do a while back, never really got to it. I kind of mentioned it in some of my other videos, but as the title says, I'm going to be starting my top 100 games of all time list. The reason I wanted to do this so much is I feel it's a perfect combination of two of the most popular videos on my channel, or videos on my channel. That would be the collection videos and also the top 10 hidden gems, those type of videos. The reason why I think it's such a good combination is you get to see a bunch of games that are in my collection from a bunch of different game consoles all in one kind of series. One thing I will say though is I'm not really a retro gamer too much. For those of you who haven't watched anything about my channel before and this is like your first video tuning in, this list will really be from the PS1 era up. I don't really go back that far for a few reasons. That may be another video topic, but for right now I'm just focusing on the list. And also there's certain genres that you might say, oh, there's tons of good games for these consoles, but they just fall into genres I don't really get into personally. Those would be puzzle games, platformers, and anything top-down I'm not really a huge fan of personally, so you won't see too many of those on my list, with a few exceptions. This will also include PC games as well, because I have a gaming computer, and hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Definitely let me know if you like this mini-series idea by leaving a like, comments about the video. It just helps me know what type of content people are wanting to see on my channel. Just before I get into reviewing the game specifically, I just want to mention that each review will probably be around 2 to 3 minutes. I'm not looking to extend out the reviews too much, so this video isn't huge. This one's going to include the first 100 to 80 games, so I'm doing it in 20 chunks, so 20 game chunks. With the top 20 moving down to a 10 block, so I'll be only doing 10 games in those videos. I'll be doing 2 videos on the top 20. Just so I can go a little more in depth of those games that reached kind of the peak of my gaming list. And without further ado, let's just get right into the video. So first up, we're diving into one of my favorite genres out there. I talk about it all the time on the channel, and that is the arcadey sports games. And this just happens to be one of the best out there. It's NBA Street Volume 2. For those of you who don't know about these games, or kind of the street games in general, it's taking all the licensed and actual NBA players of the time. This was in the early 2000s, so it's like the Paul Pierce, Vince Carter, Kobe Bryant, Shaq era. And basically what they do is put it, instead of a simulation style of game, into this arcadey 3-on-3 super fun. It's like NBA Jam almost, but more street basketball, more focused on deking out everybody, doing these crazy flashy moves, dunking, posterizing. You build up Game Breaker and unleash these cool shots that give you like different points, and there's this whole like campaign mode where you can go through, level up characters, level up your own character, recruit different characters from custom characters to street legends to NBA players, and just kind of rule the streets. There's a ton of stuff to do in these games. The gameplay is just fast, fun, and it's really just a blast. Also, this game specifically has an amazing soundtrack for the game. It just fits it so well and really adds to the elements. The announcer's fun, and if you're just into arcadey sports games or sports games in general, this is one of the best out there, especially in the basketball genre. I would highly recommend anybody pick this up if they haven't, and that's why it lands number 100 on my list. And I just want to mention before I move on even more, all these games that I'm going to be talking about are good games. Like the base, as you saw with Street, I really enjoy that game. So all these games on this list are going to be good to great games, and then top 10 being amazing games. Alright, so next up is actually a spin-off game. This is Persona 4 Arena. This is one of those games that I enjoy for 2 reasons. One, it's made by the same people that made BlazBlue, I'm pretty sure, and I'm a huge BlazBlue fan. I really enjoy the sprites, how the action is, how the combat is, and it's just a really fun game. For those of you who don't know about the BlazBlue games or this game in general, it's a 2D fighting game, so it's 2D sprites, very fast paced, very colorful, very bright, and it takes place in the Persona 4 universe, also mixed in with the Persona 3 characters. Like any other game, mixed in with the Persona franchise. What you're getting this game for is the amount of story content and the engaging and interesting story you'll be taken through in this game. Just like any other game in the Persona series, there's a lot of content and it's very fleshed out. There's a lot of character development through it, and there's a lot of different perspectives you get on each event that's happening. The story is fantastic in these games. The fighting is very good. It takes off kind of as a continuation after the end of Persona 4. So if you're like me and extremely enjoyed Persona 4 and wanted to get more, I don't know, time or adventures in with the characters, this is a fantastic game, and there's 2 in the series. This one, the first one, is, in my opinion, the best one, because I think the arcade's a little more fleshed out, the story's a little more interesting. The combat I kind of touched on earlier, it's the same as BlazBlue. For those of you who don't know BlazBlue, it's very fast paced, there's a ton of different fighters, they all play very uniquely, which is kind of a style distinct to these types of games, where they all have very specific play styles, and none of them really feel like the same character kind of copy and paste over like other fighting games do. And honestly, overall, if you just enjoy the Persona games, especially 4 or 3, as much as I do, this is a fantastic game to pick up, and just to experience the characters and see kind of where their adventures take them after the end of Persona 4 was fantastic to see. So, amazing game. Alright, now this will probably be the most questionable one that people will say on my list. It's a PC game. It's basically a throwback nostalgia game for me. Obviously you can see it on the screen now, but it's Balloon Tower Defense 6. The reason why this game gets on my list at the 98th spot is the nostalgia factor, and also it's just a good game. For those of you who played any of these games when you were in like elementary school like me, this is kind of one of those games that takes me back to playing those Flash games on school computers or at home when I had a little bit of spare time. And just, it's a joy to play, and it's fun. There's a lot of upgrades compared to other Balloon Tower Defense games. There's a ton of maps. It's just a basic tower defense game with some upgrade mechanics. There's boss modes occasionally, and they're always updating with content. There's always new maps and stuff. This is my like #1 time killer game in between when I'm a little bored or I'm just watching YouTube while eating or something like that. I'll have this running on the side. It's just a really good time killer, a really well made game, a lot of fun. It's the right mix of challenging if you want to do the really hard challenges, but very easy to pick up and play if you just want to do like beginner or easy levels. It also has online co-op for those of you who want to play with friends. And honestly, this is just a nostalgia game mixed in with one I put a lot of time into just because it's my go-to time killer game. Alright, so coming in at the 97th spot is Metro Redux. So this is a remake of, or remaster more so, of 2 of the Metro games. These, I don't remember the console they were originally on. I know they're on the PS3 and Xbox 360. I don't know if they're on an older console before that. But I played the one on the PS4. I played kind of the combination disc of the 2, and I really fell in love with these games. For those of you who don't know about these games, they are horror first-person shooter. They're similar to Bioshock in the nature of it's first-person shooting, there's monsters, there's a lot of cool set pieces with different areas it kind of linearly takes you through, but it kind of feels open in a sense. There's a lot of different guns, there's some customization, and the main thing that makes this game different compared to other shooters is it's kind of one of those games that you have limited ammo and limited supplies, so you gotta kind of watch when you're shooting. You can stealth your way through certain sections. You need to conserve types of ammo for certain different types of monsters if they come up. So if you're playing on a harder difficulty, it's stressful in a good way, where it's a fair challenge and you're just kind of thinking all the way through it. Also, the story's pretty interesting. It's nothing super amazing, but I find the world and the atmosphere that this game's create is fantastic. That's what kind of reminds me of Bioshock with these games. If you're into kind of these darker stories, this is a fantastic game. And if you're into first-person shooters yourself, this would also be a game I'd highly recommend. It's probably pretty cheap to pick up too for the dual pack, so it's just a great pickup. Alright, coming in at 96 is one of my favorite co-op games I've played on the PC, and that is Orcs Must Die 2. This game is fantastic. It combines two of the games genres I like the most, which is tower defense games on the PC, a lot of fun, and combines it with a third-person shooter, which is fantastic, kind of with like melee things, because I play the guy with the hammer, so you can kind of spin around and hit stuff if you want to, but it's mainly a third-person shooter tower defense game. What I love about these games is they blend the tower defense and the kind of third-person combat perfectly in terms of a balance. Like, your towers do so much. You can put in troops that can kind of shoot bows or stall enemies with like hammers or stuff, kind of like roadblocks. You can kind of path them with certain destructible objects and place traps all over the walls and ceilings and stuff like that. So it really allows you to create kind of your own play style, where you can combine the weapons you use, which you have 2 slots, so you can have 2 different weapons and a bunch of different traps and combo them together to take down certain enemies. It's also a great game if you have a friend who you want to play this with. It's a ton of fun. There's a lot of good levels. There's kind of endless wave challenge modes, so there's always stuff to do in endgame, and it's just one of those games that I had a ton of fun playing through cooperatively, and I would highly recommend it. And it's fun to go back occasionally just solo and just play a couple rounds and go back to some campaign missions that I really love. So overall, it's just a great game. Alright, coming at 95 is Command & Conquer Red Alert 3. I'm going to correct myself from my PS3 collection video. A commenter pointed it out in my PS3 video. I said this was an RPG. I know it's not an RPG, it is an RTS. It's one of my favorite games. I slipped of the tongue, but I corrected it here. So this is an RTS game, and it's one of the actually best console RTSs I've played. What makes this game so unique compared to other RTSs I've played, and why it makes this list, is the fact that there's 3 different campaigns with 3 different factions. Each faction has such unique units and playstyles where they're not so unique that you have to relearn the game, but you have to relearn build comps, how to build out your certain units, the structure, order that you put down structures, and what units beat what units, and what certain factions are really good at and what they're weak at. So it's a ton of fun to learn the different factions. Also, there's really fleshed out campaign modes. Each of them have, like, I think somewhere to be 10 to 13 levels, I think. But I remember them all being pretty decently long. And it has a kind of fun put together story with a bunch of live action cutscenes with a bunch of different characters. Some of them are actors I recognize. I don't know them by name, but it's interesting to see the different factions and go through their little story. What this game also does really well is how it controls. As I said before, it's probably the best console RTS I've played. I find the controlling of each unit, moving between structures, and attacking, doing orders, like kind of micromanaging units and stuff like that, very smooth in these games. And overall, if you're a big fan of RTSs and you have a PS3 or a console to play this on, or Steam, I think it's on Steam as well, this is a worthwhile RTS game to get. And playing through the campaigns is just a lot of fun. Even though there's no like online anymore, the campaigns are worth it in itself. I would highly recommend this game, and that's why it's on my list. Alright, so coming up next is Bioshock Infinite, and this brings me to another rule I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, and that I'm only allowing myself to pick 2 of a certain game series. So I'm not having the list flooded with a bunch of different games from the same series, because I find that would be a little boring to keep on talking about the same game series over and over again. So I limit myself to picking 2 of the best from some of my favorite series. So most people know about Bioshock Infinite. It's a horror first-person shooter that really relies on the atmosphere it creates. What I specifically really enjoyed about Infinite that gets it on this list is the atmosphere that this game creates. It's a little different than Rapture in that you're in the sky, not underwater, and it kind of goes for more of a lighter atmosphere that has dark undertones. So you're seeing this bright, vibrant city, and then all of a sudden you see the underbelly, the dark underbelly as you're going through the story, and kind of the messed up nature of the city comes to life. It's very interesting. The combat's fantastic, probably the best in the series. And overall, if you're a fan of horror games or first-person shooters, this is a classic. And it's one I would highly recommend getting into if you haven't got into the series already. I would recommend going 1, 2, 3. They're all fantastic games. Just Infinite happens to be one of my favorite 2 out of the game series. Alright, so coming in at 93 is Medieval Resurrection. This is the PSP version of the medieval game. I think it was originally on the PS1. I never got to play the original PS1 game. My dad had it. I watched him play it when I was very young. So I picked it up on the PSP when I got one, and I really enjoyed the game. The gameplay you're seeing is not from the PSP. Obviously, it's HD. This is the PS4 remaster of it. My PSP, I don't have the charger cord for some reason. I don't know where it is, so I can't get it on. So for the couple I think there's 3 PSP games that make the list for me. They'll have kind of a substitute gameplay. This is basically a direct substitution because it's roughly the same game. So back to the game. For those of you who don't know about the medieval game, specifically Resurrection, it's a third-person hack and slash game that really kind of feels like almost like an original Souls style of game where it's challenging and hard, but it's a fair challenge and you feel like you can complete it. It takes you a lot of tries, but once you complete it, it's very rewarding. What makes this game so unique compared to other games I've played is the fact that it combines these kind of comedic and funny moments in the game and this really unique art style that's kind of comic-y and cheerful and kind of just funny and almost cartoony, with this very challenging and dark kind of story. Sir Daniel Foddeskill, the guy you play as, really funny, entertaining, and kind of helps make the game unique. He's definitely a character you're rooting for to help succeed through this story. And honestly, it's just the right amount of having to try really hard and fun, and it's just mixed up with a game with a unique art style, really cool delivery of the game, and some fun combat. So I would recommend getting into it if you haven't got into it yet. Alright, coming up next is actually the first PS5 game getting on the list, and that is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've mentioned this a couple times on the channel. I'm a pretty big Assassin's Creed fan, or previously was. I played all the games up until Unity, besides Rogue, and then this was my first game getting back into the series, and also the first game I played on the PS5, and it was actually a great change of pace compared to all the other Assassin's Creed games. For those of you who, for some reason, haven't heard of the series, it's a stealth game that kind of focuses on a mix of stealth combat through like following, eavesdropping, assassinations, hiding in crowds, kind of blending in, kind of Hitman-y without the taking on disguises type thing, and also focuses on some third-person hack and slash combat. If you get caught, you can kind of battle your way out of certain situations, unless it's like a mission lock stealth thing. What I specifically really enjoyed about this game is they basically threw the mandatory stealth out the window and made it so you can either play it as a stealth game or you can play it as a full hack and slash, just run around kicking the crap out of everything type of game, which really fits the Viking kind of lore, I guess, or atmosphere they're going for in this game. I also really enjoyed the fact that this is probably one of the most expansive Assassin's Creed in terms of size. Again, I haven't played like Origins or any of that. I'm hoping to get into those soon, but out of the ones I've played, this is the biggest by far. This game gives you also so much to do and so much variety. From leveling up your character, you can create a ton of different weapons, you can create a ton of different outfits that give you certain perks and abilities, really creating your own version of the main character and creating your own build is really a lot of fun. There's a settlement that you own that you can kind of upgrade, and it'll upgrade your perks throughout the game and kind of progresses the story. There's the main story, there's a bunch of different sub-stories through each of the areas that you're conquering, and overall it took me like 90 hours to beat the game fully, and I enjoyed every second of it. The majority of the characters that you meet throughout this game, especially the ones you interact with all the different areas you're conquering or trying to get allies in, are fantastically well made, and they really fit the areas. There's a bunch of different, very unique characters you meet, and just going through, beating the crap out of stuff, doing cool boss battles that rely a lot on chambering, dodging at the right time, and there's a lot of skill into the third-person combat and depth to it. I really actually enjoy this game a lot, and I would highly recommend it if you're into hack and slash games at all, or really haven't touched the Assassin's Creed games in a while. This was a great coming back or restarting of my love of the Assassin's Creed series for me, so that's why it gets on the list. Alright, coming up next is Outer Worlds. This is a game made by Obsidian, who made Fallout New Vegas. It follows the same style and really is the same general game style as New Vegas, where it's a first-person shooter with some melee elements in it, and really focuses on the RPG elements. What I love about this game and what I love about New Vegas is the dialogue system and the RPG mechanics in these games. The fact that each playthrough you can create such a unique character that gives it different dialogue options, different ways to complete quests, different kind of reactions from your crew members and stuff like that, really makes these games special. The reason why it's not as high as where New Vegas is on my list, spoilers kind of, is the fact that I didn't find the story as interesting as New Vegas, but the world they create in this game is fantastic. It's interesting, the combat's really well done, definitely a step up from New Vegas in terms of combat, and overall this was just one of those modern RPGs that I really enjoyed, and honestly one of the better games I've played on the PS4. Not the longest of games, which is one of the downsides of this game, but the entire time playing this game is really enjoyable, and I kind of blew through it really quickly because I was enjoying it so much. So very much deserving of a spot on this list. Alright, so coming at number 90, we got another PC game that's also available on the consoles. For those of you who don't have a PC, you're also able to pick up this game, and that is Killing Floor 2. Now, Killing Floor 2 is not the most well-made game in terms of its optimization. It takes forever to load, crashes occasionally, but when it works, and it works for the majority of the time, just it has some issues. It is a fantastic co-op game to play, and really just a fun zombie survival game, and I think probably my favorite out of the genre. What this game does so great compared to other games in the genre is the amount of classes there are and the variety of weapons. What Killing Floor is, it's a first-person shooter, zombie kind of wave survival game. So if you played zombies on Call of Duty, it's basically the same type of game, except there's an end to the levels, and they don't just go on forever. But as I was saying with the classes, there's such a different variety, there's so many different weapons in the game. The first-person combat is fantastic. You can play as a melee character, you can play as a healer, you can play as just a regular assault rifle guy, snipers, double pistols, flamethrower. There's so many different classes. They all have their unique upgrade trees where you can structure your own perks how you want them and kind of create your own class. There's also a ton of levels. Levels still get added in occasionally. And what I really enjoyed about this game, and specifically why I have the PC version, is the amount of custom maps. There's custom maps for a bunch of different series, games, TV shows, all made by people, and it's fantastic to play on these custom maps and really adds a variety to the game that you probably couldn't get on the console versions, and why I love this game so much. It's just one of those games that if I'm between playing like League or Valorant or something like that and just want something to sit down, have some fun, shoot some zombies, and kill a boss at the end, and just have some quick fun, it's a game I'll load up a lot of the time. And the custom maps really take it up that tier and really make it fun to just find some crazy cool custom maps and just play them occasionally. Alright, so coming in the first game in the 80s, number 89, is NHL 12, specifically on the PS3. A lot of you might be saying right now, why do you have just a basic ass generic NHL game on this list? Sports games are just kind of dumb, and they're kind of the same thing over and over and over again. I agree with that to an extent, and I don't play current NHL games, but this game is the perfect blend for me. So those of you who don't know and didn't really play the NHL games, the earlier ones are actually basically just arcadey sports games. They're arcadey NHL games. Very much just you can do like super spin moves, like turbo and stuff like that, and it's just very arcadey and fun and fast paced, huge hits, There's no like simulation ice movement. It's very slow and kind of like circular, like regular skating. It's just straight boom, smack people, score, really fast paced and fun. And this game is, in my opinion, the perfect mix of the new games where they kind of do the flip stick for the controlling the puck and the stick with the analog stick, and it kind of has a little more realistic movement but still has that arcadey feel to it. I won't spend too much time talking about this game. It has all the modes I like, especially fantasy draft season mode, which is kind of my go-to, and it's just, in my opinion, the best NHL game and the best hockey game out there that I've played. So that's the reason it gets on the list. It's just good fun. Alright, so next up, coming in at 88, is actually the last game I finished playing through, and that is Judgement. For those of you who don't know about Judgement, Judgement is made by the same people who made Yakuza. So if you played Yakuza 0 or Yakuza Kiwami, it's very much the same as those games in terms of style. And for those of you who haven't played those games, they're very fast-paced, beat-em-up games that really focus on having this big, giant city that really feels alive. It's very interactive. There's a ton of different story missions. It's a very long game. It has an amazing, in-depth story. What this game story-wise is compared to the Yakuza games is you're playing as a ex-lawyer who's now a detective. So you're kind of going from the other side of the law, and you're trying to unravel this big mystery and case that has a bunch of different layers to it and a bunch of different cases interconnecting to each other. I won't talk about the specific of it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who does want to play it. But what I really enjoyed of these games and what you can expect if you pick it up is a very fun interactive city, tons of different mini games to play, a ton of side quests which are range from super serious to insanely goofy and just out in left field, which these games are known for. Fantastic combat. The actual detective stuff you do compared to the Yakuza games, the following, the analyzing people, and kind of the pinning clues in certain dialogue selections to get like kind of the right answer or get the right answers out of people is actually really fun and adds a unique element to these games. And what kind of sets this apart from other games like this, like Fist of the North Star and stuff like that, is the story is actually really well done, and I really enjoyed the story throughout this game. And the whole time, although there was some stuff I kind of knew what was coming, some of the twists and stuff like that really took me by surprise, and I really ended up enjoying the story a lot. And all the characters are super interesting, and there's none of the main characters that, you know how there's usually one character you hate or a couple characters you really just aren't interested in? All the main characters that you interact with in this game work really well together and really are interesting and fun to get to know. So I highly recommend this game, and this was just a real blast to play through. Alright, so coming in the 87th position is Fallout 4. And if you tune into my channel at all, you know there's a lot of things I'm not fond of this game, but there's a lot of things I am fond of this game. In my opinion, it's the second best Fallout game in terms of the ones I've played. I think Fallout 3 could take the place of this. I just played Fallout 3 on the PS3, and there was a lot of missions I couldn't do because of how buggy and poorly optimized it was. So Fallout 4 gets the spot for me. What I really loved about Fallout 4 is, for a open world RPG, the combat was really well done. The first person combat and the combat system in this game, I think, is a lot better than the older Fallout games. Really feels a lot smoother. The gunplay works a lot better. The VATS is still pretty good, and the abilities and perks kind of interact with the combat very well. What this game doesn't do fantastic compared to other RPGs I've played is the actual RPG elements. You can kind of be a jack of all trade. It kind of suffers from this issue Skyrim does, where you can kind of just do everything. Your character doesn't feel that unique each playthrough, unless you force yourself to stick with certain things. And the dialogue options are really not that good in this game. But what makes up for it, and why it still makes this list with all those flaws, is the fact that the open world, the quests are still interesting. The main story is actually pretty interesting. The combat, as I said, is fantastic. Side missions are still really well done. And specifically for me, I think it's the Far Harbor DLC, the one where there's that other section of the map and you kind of go help out a bunch of like fishermen and stuff. That DLC was fantastic, and it reminded me of the older Fallout games. So that DLC alone carries a lot of this placement on this list. And overall, the atmosphere and the music and all that is still fantastic in this game. And it just was a lot of fun to play. There was some disappointment from me, but overall it's still good enough to make this list. Alright, next up we have Jack and Daxter, specifically the first one. I know this is the triple pack. I don't have the games individually, but I have the triple pack on the PS3. Specifically, I'm talking about the first game. I don't really like the second and third one, but the first one's fantastic. The first one, for those of you who don't know about these games, it's a platforming game, third person, with some Ratchet and Clanky kind of like combat to it almost. How this game works and why I like it compared to the other games is the fact that it's kind of just like a big collectathon with kind of little mini quests you do to earn stuff for the collectathon. The characters and the atmosphere in this game are really well done. Jack and Daxter are really funny and entertaining throughout this entire game, especially compared to 2 and 3 where they get really like edgy and not as interesting. In the first game, they're really just kind of funny and goofy, and it kind of sets the tone for the entire game, where the first game is really kind of, it almost feels like kiddie in the style of sense. It's very colorful. The music's great, the atmosphere is really cool. It's just a bunch of fun platforming mixed with some cool interactive quests that give you kind of different variations of platforming. And overall, it was just really fun to play. And for me, not being a fan of platformers, to really get engaged with a platformer really makes it kind of automatically on my top 100 list, because it has to be a really good platformer to get me interested in it, and this game definitely did. So coming up next is Civilization 5. Specifically 5. I haven't played any of the other ones. I heard 5 was the best, so that's the one I bought on Steam. What these games are is kind of a grid-based strategic game, where it's kind of like a RTS without the real time, and it's like grid-based unit movement and city building. So you basically start out as a small city and kind of build your way up through technology, politics, your army, and a bunch of different stuff. And your goal is to conquer the other factions in the game. They use real famous leaders or political figures from these different nations, and you play as different nations. They all have their different abilities, and your goal is kind of to win the game in the style you deem fit. So you can win by kind of the technology space race, by being first into space. You can win by just conquering everybody, like going around killing everybody and taking over their capitals. You can win through tourism, and there's a couple others. The main reason why I love this game is the amount of depth in this game. There's so many different builds, so many different options you can go. The online community is still very active for it. If you have friends to play, you can play these huge games with a bunch of different friends, and it's just a lot of fun. And you can play co-op versus AI, which the AIs is still pretty challenging on harder difficulties, so it still makes for a fun play session. And you can also download these huge maps, and you can play these massive, like, tons of turns ones where you're taking over these huge continents. And there's just so much you can do with these games, and the style of the game, and how interesting the combat and the depth of the strategy in these games is fantastic. The music's great. Learning about all the different art and poetry from like your cultural stuff, seeing a bunch of different leaders and like generals throughout history. It's just really awesome to see in these games, and I really enjoy these games. This is one I'm kind of breaking my 2 games only rule, but I'm putting them all together because they're very similar, but that are all the Lego games I've played. I specifically chose Lego Marvel Superheroes to represent them all because it's probably my favorite. That or the older Star Wars games. And side note, the new Star Wars Lego game that's coming out looks fantastic, and I'm really excited for that game. So that's one I'm definitely going to be picking up. But to get back on topic, the reason why the Lego games make the list, and actually at a decently high mark compared to all the other games I've played, is that it's just so much fun, and it's one of those games that kind of takes you back to being a kid. I played the new trilogy one, the episode 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars when I was really young, and playing like the Indiana Jones ones, the Hobbit, the Lego movie, the superheroes one, just all throughout my years of being a gamer. It's always fantastic to pick up and play these games. They're always good fun. They do a phenomenal job of representing the original content and the original story, but putting their own unique twist by making it kind of kid-friendly and playful. There's some adult jokes mixed in, and it just feels like you're playing through a really good children's movie that's based off of the original kind of usually more adult themed movie or show or game that it's based on. It's just a lot of fun. The humor is usually great. The combats just kind of go around, shoot, hit some stuff, do some puzzles, and it's just each game's just a little fun playthrough to play through. You can go around 100%ing it. There's a lot of replayability, going through and getting all the characters. So you can either put a lot of time in or just play through it for a one fun playthrough. And they're always just great games to pick up and play if you really need something and you're looking for just something fun and happy to play through. Alright, next up is a game I would actually consider a hidden gem on the PS2. I don't know if it's on any other consoles, but I specifically have it on the PS2, and that's Rumble Racing. For those of you who haven't heard of this game, it is a fantastic arcade racer. Back when arcade racers were really thriving at the time. This game is kind of, I would say, similar to a kind of burnout-y style game in terms of how the driving feels. It doesn't have like the takedowns and stuff like that. It has the powers-ups of kind of like a Mario Kart game, but really relies on doing like a bunch of different stunts and flips and stuff like that to keep your turbo going throughout the entire race. What this game does so well and why I enjoyed it so much, one, it's very nostalgic for me, which a lot of these games, nostalgia plays a big factor into how much I enjoyed these games. I played this game as a kid with my brother. It's a fantastic play. There's a ton of different variety of levels. There's a ton of different cars in the game, all with like each tier. So you get like the beginner tier, a pro tier, and the ultra tier of the cars. Kind of like CC's in Mario Kart. You can kind of bump around other racers, use different weapons. The weapons, there's a lot of different variety and they're pretty balanced. And it's overall just a lot of fun to play through all the different GPs and tournaments, unlocking all the cars, unlocking the tracks, and it's just a very solid arcade racer with some cool music and just a blast to play. Alright, so coming in at number 82, you would recognize this from my hidden gems list. I think it's the second one, if I'm not mistaken. It's the second or first one on the PS3. I talk about this game. And this is Split Second. What Split Second is a fantastic racing game for the PS3. And what makes this game so unique compared to other racing games on the console is the fact that, one, the driving and all that's really well done. It's kind of it almost plays kind of like a Need for Speed game, where it's kind of arcadey but has like some drifting mechanics and stuff like that. And why I enjoy this game so much is the thing that sets us apart in terms of gameplay wise. Instead of picking up objects or power-ups to like knock out opponents like a Mario Kart game, or just slamming into people and knocking them off the track like a Burnout style of game, you interact with the environment by building up kind of boost and turbo, or your interact meter or impact meter, I forget what it's called, but it allows you to interact with stuff outside the track that you can cause like oil slicks to fall on the track. You can cause buildings to collapse on the track and cause cars that are aligned on the side to blow up and take out riders riding by it. And you can even cause these huge ones where you can cause like bridges to collapse and completely change the layout of the track midway through a race. And it's really the only game I know of that really takes this style to the racing games. It also has a really long campaign mode with a couple of different modes, very generic modes, like time trials, elimination style races, and regular races, but it's enough to keep a little bit of variety. Overall, just an insanely good racer, and one I thoroughly enjoyed playing through and would really recommend to anybody who's really into racers. Alright, almost on the first 20 games. And next up we have Battalion Wars. This is a fantastic exclusive for the GameCube. What this game is, it's basically like an RTS game that you can also take control of one unit and play it like a third-person shooter. So it has that mix of two different combat styles and gameplay styles meshing together. And sometimes those games don't work out too well, but this game, it works out fantastically. So Battalion Wars is basically just generic. You're the green team, green army, they're the good guys, and the red team's bad, kill the red team, and there's a bunch of different little story missions. What makes this game so great is, one, the music and kind of atmosphere is fantastic. It's kind of like a kiddie version of a war game, but still has like mature stuff to it. You're still shooting people and killing people and stuff like that, but it's done in a very comedic and kid-friendly way. It's not a kid game, but it's done in that kind of art style. The third-person combat gets the job done. It's kind of just generic, lock onto somebody, shoot them up. Each guns usually have like 2 fire modes in terms of like a charge and a regular shot. And there's a variety of different units to use. The unit types interact with different units well. So bazooka guys are very good against tanks. Tanks are good against infantry units. Infantry units are good against bazooka guys and grenadiers. And then you can have, I think later you get planes and stuff like that. But there's a good variety of units to keep it very unique throughout the campaign. That's another thing. The campaign is pretty long. I think there's something like 20 or so missions, and there's also secret missions you unlock by completing a certain percentage of the campaign in terms of like beating levels fast without using units, and technically by like keeping your actions good and using this kind of stop, start, attack with certain units correctly. Is how the game views it to like beat it optimally. The RTS controls are great. It's kind of more not like an RTS game where you micromanage from an up top view. It's kind of like you can do that, and then you go into the third person to actually fully command the units and interact and shoot with them. So it's a good blend. It's a very unique game, and I would highly recommend it. Alright, then finally, at number 80, we got one of the probably greatest PC games ever made, and that is Team Fortress 2. For those of you who have not heard of this game for whatever reason, it is an online class-based shooter. So what this is, there's a bunch of different classes. There's snipers, spies that kind of backstab with knives and have revolvers. There's a soldier which has a rocket launcher, pyro that has a, well, flamethrower, and a heavy that has a giant-ass machine gun, and a medic that can kind of heal people. Those of you who've heard of Overwatch, it's basically that, but the kind of original popular one. And honestly, it's the better version of it. What TF2 does so well, and why it gets on this list, is one, I have huge nostalgia for the game. When I originally got a computer and laptop that could play games, it was one of the first games I got into, and I played it all the time. Even just on like community custom servers, trade servers, just messing around. It was good fun. And also the balance of this game. All the classes are very unique. I think there's 9 or 10 of them in total, maybe 11. It's not overwhelming where eventually if you keep on making characters, you're gonna have some imbalances coming because there's so many different variables in terms of characters and how they interact. I find the perfect balance of the amount of characters, so really one class doesn't feel super strong compared to others, and there's certain classes that thrive well against certain classes and certain classes that are horrible against different classes. So there's a very balanced gameplay to it. Also, the online community, for as long as I've had a computer that plays it, is always very active. You can always find games, and it's just good fun. If you're into first-person shooters at all, haven't played this on the PC, or getting your own computer and playing PC games, this is one I could highly recommend it. And now they have like a co-op kind of zombies mode, man versus machine. You're facing robots and stuff. So there's a little more variety in the game. Alright, so there you have it. That wraps up my first video and my top 100 games of all time. I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. I personally really enjoyed making it. And why I would love other creators to make these type of videos is with a top 10 list or a top 25, it will kind of be the same kind of 10 games depending on what type of genres and what era they're in. They'll kind of be those same 10 kind of standout games that makes everybody's top 10, with the kind of few exceptions mixed in there. With the top 100 list, you get to see a giant glimpse at the style of games I play, what I find good, and you can see a bunch of different variety of games that I've played through a bunch of different eras of me of a gamer, and all a bunch of different consoles I've played. So I find it's really interesting. I hope you guys found that as well. If you guys enjoyed this series, definitely let me know by liking the video and commenting that you do. Again, it kind of just helps me let me know that this is something you want to see continued, and you like these type of videos. Also, let me know some of the games that would make your top, I don't know, 25. If you want to do 100, go ahead. I'll look at it. But some of your top games of all time, if there's any games that you saw on my list that you really enjoyed or haven't heard about, or looking to get yourself, definitely let me know about that as well. And as always, thanks for watching, and remember, everybody has nerdiness at their core.